Okay, so we just wanted to start with a prayer. Um, and I was hoping to get this prayer recorded, but I wanted to share a prayer from my daughter. So I'm gonna find, sorry, I queued it up. Hopefully, oh, you know what? Let me do it one more time. Let me stop sharing, share again.
Oh God, Lord, these lovely children are the handiwork of the fingers of thy might, and the wondrous signs and the wondrous signs and the wondrous signs of thy greatness.
So I think children are a big part of our stories. So I wanted to share a prayer from a child. I'm gonna go ahead and this in full screen. So we wanted to start out sharing a little bit about how our stories are connected, and then go into the rest of the storytelling. Mom, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So Rose lived in Austin, and it starts with Rose helping start a community garden at the Austin Baha'i Center. Then in the meantime, she moved to San Antonio and she met Valerie's daughter. Valerie, like sometime later, saw an article about the Baha'i Center Garden in the American Baha'i, and she wanted to talk to Rose and got in touch with Rose. And then Rose told me I should get in touch with Valerie because she was so nice and we both like to garden. And I invited Valerie and Rose's and her daughter, Mariam, Rose's friend, to a women's retreat. And my other dear friend, it turned out we have another friend in common that lived in the valley, and with Val and Mariam, she and her kids grew up there. So, all these connections kind of started with Rose helping with the community garden in Austin. And then Valerie got me interested in the agriculture working group. She pestered me for a long time to start coming to the presentations, and then we started doing the reading groups together. And so it's been a really nice collaboration we've got going.
And I'm very close friends with Val's daughter, and yeah, all of our families are very connected now, and they all kind of happened at the same time. So, okay, so we wanted, what is this presentation? It's not a presentation. It's a storytelling. We really wanted to share our stories with you. And we wanted to, I like that you have a poster in the back behind you that says storytelling, Dawn. I noticed that. It's also a consultation. We wanted to leave some space at the end of all of our sharing for consulting with you all, about your experiences, about your learning, in relation to garden projects such as these. And if we can gain some insight from that collectively, individually, and also sharing some of the guidance that has inspired us along the way or currently inspires us. So some
Okay, thanks a lot.
um, so let's start with Carolyn's story.
Okay. So when Rose asked me to do this, I didn't think I had much to say, but I listed all the different gardening things I've done, and there were a lot. There was a wide variety. So but when I looked at it with an eye to
No
gardening,
está respondiendo. Si cierras el programa, de pronto pierdes información o esperar a que el programa responda.
Don, maybe you can mute everybody. I don't know. I don't have the ability to do that.
so I started looking at what I'd done for the first time, really, with the eye to gardening and community building specifically. Like, I mean, I think I'd been moving that direction of how to combine gardening and community building. But when I looked at the list, 3 things really stood out that seemed to me to have potential. One is, since I taught for a long time in elementary school, I had several school gardens, and they're a challenge for a teacher to do during class time because there's never enough time. But after school gardening programs have a lot of potential because you don't have to be a teacher to run an after school gardening program. A lot of schools really welcome volunteers to have after school activities. And almost any school welcomes a gardening program. And some elementary schools also support junior youth groups after school. And those 2 things can be real complementary. One can lead to the other. And both of them can involve parents, maybe even the whole family. And the person running the program can get parents to help, just like with children's classes or any other activity. And I made some good friends with parent volunteers I had doing after school gardening. So I think that's one potential thing. We had another thing. I don't know if you call this a community garden, but it was a garden with a community. So my family and I had a CSA. In the second year, we instead of doing subscriptions, we kind of bartered for labor. So every Sunday morning, some volunteers would come
Karina, no es
over
la de la biblioteca.
and they would work in the
Está, pero está
garden,
molestando. La imagen está fallando.
and they would and we would visit. It was a really nice time to visit, and they would just pick the vegetables that they wanted, and that would be the barter. And that went on for months, and I still have some good friends from that time. And I learned a lot. I think we all learned a lot from each other. That one didn't involve kids so much, but it could involve kids. It just so happened that this group was mostly grown-ups. And then the third is kind of what we're focusing on today, is community gardens. So I didn't have I wasn't in a community garden for a long time because I live in the country, and to go to a community garden, I had to drive. You can show that picture, Rosie. Yeah, that's the plot that we had first. So I decided, though, that I would like to get a plot so that the children's classes in San Marcos could have gardening activities there, because my house is pretty far. And do I want a title or just pictures?
I'm sorry. I apparently didn't take that off.
So on the right is the plot that I rented. It was number 19, and the kids made the pavers, and they helped plant a little bit. But what happened was, it was too far for them even to drive across town, because in a children's class or even a junior youth group, there's limited time, and it wasn't within walking distance. So logistically, they weren't able to do very many activities there. It was just, like a few times. So I gave up that plot and became the team leader for the food bank plot. So I didn't have my own plot, but that was fine. This picture on the left is Baha'i kids doing service, helping harvest at the food bank plot. So they got to, that was flexible. They could come whenever. and do some service in the plot. So both those things are okay, but I got tired of driving in on a scheduled basis. So I gave up both those, and my current project that I'm working on is just to find some people in the neighborhood of the community garden to help garden at their home. But I'm even rethinking that. I kind of, after I went through, my list of what I'd done, what might be good for community development, I came up with some themes, or maybe like a rubric or a criteria for projects. And one of the big ones is just location. So I'm thinking that any garden should be at a Baha'i center or in a focused neighborhood if you're trying to do community gardening, so that everybody has proximity. It's really something you need to be close to. Having activities at regular times is good. Having an identified common goal is good. The less organization you have to deal with, the better. I felt like in this community garden that had already been going for a few years, I wasn't comfortable with I was comfortable with inviting people for Baha'i activities, but they didn't really include the whole garden. There was already a garden culture, and I didn't know how to turn that to a more Baha'i culture. So that's why I said less organizational restraints. So if you start a garden, or if the garden is already at a Baha'i center, you don't have to work around the culture that's already in the garden so much, if that makes sense. Some other things are, if people in the garden do have to travel, then it's good to garden in pairs or teams so that people can back each other up. And if you're trying to do community garden in your own home garden or in your home area, it's good to have related activities like potlucks, seed swaps, and plant swaps like that. So those are, I started gardening because I love gardening, but as we get more and more guidance, I'm thinking more and more, how do we make this a community building tool? And when we finish everybody's little story, I would really like to hear about everybody in the group's experiences with using community garden as a tool. Gardening as a tool for community building. That's it.
Did you want to read that quote, or did you want to read the quote, or?
If it's up, I just sent it to you and I didn't type it out.
It's right. Can you see where it?
This, yeah. So the first quote from the Hidden Words, has been guiding me. I connected with that just since my very early days of being a Baha'i. You all know this quote: "Every man of discernment, while walking upon the earth, feeleth indeed abashed, inasmuch as he is fully aware that the thing which is the source of his prosperity, his wealth, his might, his exaltation, his advancement and power is, as ordained by God, the very earth which is trodden beneath the feet of all men." And since Winnie has started putting out compilations, I have so many, many more Baha'i quotes that have been guiding. And there's also one I read recently from Rumi: "Everyone has been made for some particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in every heart." So I feel like that's why I garden. It's just in my heart.
I love that. Okay, before I start to share my story, I want to say it's very connected to my mom's story because I was raised by her on a little farm, learning about growing food and all of that. But it wasn't really until I went to school and started to study more academically about the benefits of getting into public health and nutrition and studying more about the research behind gardening and or growing food, gardening-based projects, and health. And when I did my master's, I did basically a really in-depth literature review on community gardens and child-centered gardening, let's call it that, or like gardens in schools and how they were used for health promotion, and learned a lot about that. Got really excited about the potential of gardening. I also got interested myself in like learning more about it and learning more about how it was connected to people's nutrition and health and the environment. So actually, this is a more recent quote from the Rizwan message 2023 that I pulled out that I hope we can examine more closely the whole entire quote at the end of the presentation, because it's great. It's a great kind of launching point for discussion and consultation. But so this definitely is current inspiration for me in thinking about why community gardening is important, why learning these skills in community is important. And I hope everybody can see it on their screen. Can everyone see it on their screen? If they can, if anybody wants me to read it, I'll read it. Otherwise, I made my mom read hers, but otherwise I'll just move on to the full quote later. But definitely, and also, when we're talking about reading groups, these reading groups that we've been doing, I think this book that we've been studying now is also making me think why it's so important to be involved in a local garden project where you're raising capacity and to grow food. So anyway, on to, can I ask a quick question? Can you guys see this? Like that I'm the Zoom people bar. Can you see this
No.
that I'm moving around?
No,
Okay, perfect.
no,
I
can't
just
see
want
it.
to make sure it wasn't in the way of the slides. Okay. So New Day Community Garden was really a community collaboration from the very beginning. It really started from some conversations of Baha'is that were living in Austin, that were, coming to things at the Baha'i Center, that lived nearby, that basically, were involved in agriculture, were involved in some sort of involved in gardening or agriculture and interested in this topic. And so here we have, this is like one of the kind of foundational meetings, although I really remember like a meeting in a different room. This is the Baha'i Center. I remember a meeting in a different room with my mom was there. Some other people are there that were just interested. We had this big area of the Baha'i Center that this field, basically this vacant field right next to the Baha'i Center that was had a great sunshine and was bordered by like mesquite trees and bamboo, and basically was underutilized. Like there were the Baha'is used it for the Baha'i community used it, sometimes just for the kids to run around, sometimes like soccer games, but it was just this big bare open with one tree in the middle. And so, yeah, we all got together and started talking about this idea of starting a community garden. We were all inspired for different reasons. And we somehow, and I don't remember all the details of it. I feel like I have this written up somewhere and I couldn't find it, but we collaborated with this group. This lady's a landscape architect who lives down the street from the Baha'i Center and has this really cool compound where she like demos a lot of her work. but so we were able to network and collaborate with her and her group, which was called Design, Build, Live. And they were excited about helping us with this project and donated a lot of time and hours and, you know, materials to helping us design the garden. Mandy here was part of the Baha'i community at the time, and she was friends, I would say, in our nuclei of friends, you know, and she helped us design the garden because she was a landscape designer. She is a landscape designer. And here we have a member of the assembly in the purple who we had and still continue to have in that garden, always like a assembly representative in the garden. So anyway, it started out a really joyful collaborative effort that led to led to, you know, us initiating the garden. We got some funds from various sources. The city of Austin also, I was good friends with the director of the Office of Sustainability at the time. There happened to be a grant that for community gardens at the time, and we were able to get that. We got a few other grants for a shed and some materials from Fiskars. We were able to, it was just like things were lining up in a really magical way. I remember at this time, I was like looking through these pictures again and feeling all nostalgic for the magic of kind of like how things like really beautifully lined up. Before I go in, I did want to ask, are we presenting until the hour, or is it more than that? Is it the end of the hour?
No, we usually do 90 minutes.
Oh,
So
perfect. Okay, so we have some more time. Good, good.
we have time.
Okay. We just want to save a lot of time at the end for discussion. So this was dig day. You could see, you know, here's my mom. We had a lot of really great, just so many Baha'is. Participants enable closed captioning. Okay. A lot of Baha'is were involved, very, very excited about it. It was a community effort. They were involved in the beginning, you know, in building the garden. And then a lot of neighbors, we were able to get a lot of neighbors involved, probably with the help with the, you know, the initial people that we had networked with that knew neighbors. I know Lauren, who was part of that, who is the landscape architect, she was an amazing, I think she's from the Amish community, or no, not Amish, sorry. She attended Quaker community, but she was also like very much a community networker, builder. She knew the Baha'is, you know, she'd lived on the street for a long time. So she was excited about the project, had two little boys. This is one of her boys right here in the middle. And then all these are children in the Baha'i community, or neighbors. There's my sister. So it was just a really beautiful, that day was really great, but it was just a really beautiful start to the garden, you know. Oh yeah, I think I was reflecting on that first time that we had a meeting. We started it with prayers, you know, so it was just so great to have, you know, this grassroots effort beginning with the spiritual kind of like desire to connect with community and also just connect with the principles of our faith, you know. So here we are. Oh, this is like a leap forward ahead too. This is like probably 2 years in, I would say. And it didn't take long before the garden was looking pretty lush and amazing. And this space was used and is still used today, you know, by the Baha'is to, you know, when there's meetings, people will wander around the garden and during breaks, and when they have Rizwan or other celebrations, the garden's always used for to be a great place of gathering. I wish I I need like a 360 view here, so you can see that there's the tree right here and the children's spot behind this, and then the pavilion, which was basically, I think that we put very little money into this. I think it was like pretty like it was donated by the Design Build Live as like a demonstration pavilion. And the way they built it, these are supposed to be rain tanks. I don't know if they actually ended up functioning as that, but it was kind of a demonstration thing for them. This is the shed that we were able to get fully or grant funded with tools from Fiskars. That was very exciting. It was very exciting for me to be a part of like getting free tools for the garden. That was so cool. But I also found, I remember very well, like I was said at the beginning of the story that things were lining up like divine confirmations. And I felt like I also learned from this experience that really when you get a collective group of people that want to do a great thing like this that benefits the community, when you start to look around and ask people for collaboration or donations, it was like actually very easy to find that. Like we got dirt donated in the beginning. So there were a lot of kids involved in this community. I feel like I've learned from this that just kids and gardens just really go together like so well, they fit together like peas in a pod. And they really just like seeing the kids in the garden. This was before I had kids myself. I had nieces and nephews, and that was really fun. There were a lot of like kid related things. We had a children's class, which I'll show a picture of next. We had a children's class going for a little bit with neighbors in the community and Baha'is, but mostly neighbors, that we just went around door to door and invited people to, and they were excited to be a part of. We had the Sunday morning children's classes were also like would use the garden in their classes. And yeah, people, you'd always see, anytime you went in the garden, you always see somebody with a family or a kid running around the garden helping out. And kids like to put their hands in the dirt. And I wish that, well, I'll mention that at the end, but that's one of my questions and desires for learning about is just how could we have really leveraged the garden a little more in core activities. So yeah, this is our children's class. This is Lauren, the lady I mentioned with the landscape architect, and some other neighbors that live just down the street. And these are just some of the helpers along the way. We had pretty regular, I mean, it was very organized and continues to be pretty organized. I think the structure that we like established at the beginning continues to be a part of the garden with having officers and regular work days. I'm not sure about the regular work days. I didn't get like a thorough update of how the garden's doing now. I'm hoping that to connect with one of the gardeners that was there from the very beginning that still is there. But I did connect with the local spiritual assembly who said that it's going strong and it has its ups and downs now, but it started in 2010, well, 2011 really is when the garden got started. So it's been going for 12 years. And yeah, there's, UT, we would have like work days, and sometimes like different groups would sponsor or lead up the work days. Like this is the UT club, Baha'i Club. This is one of my coworkers from the UT School of Public Health that just joined in that lived nearby. Baha'is in the community, neighbors. And we had a lot of fun events there when I was involved. We had a movie night, we had a lot of potlucks. I think the potlucks were essential to like, because sometimes we would have these like pretty serious meetings to kind of talk about technical stuff. And it was important to also have this social aspect of like eating food together, breaking bread together. Had a really good time with that. This is my plot. I learned so much in that garden because I really didn't know how to grow anything. I mean, I guess I had it in the back of my mind from my mom, but this was definitely a learning curve for me. I learned a lot about. It was really fun to like I did square foot gardening actually in this plot, and it just like went crazy. We had a lot of food that came from that one little plot and a lot of okra. A lot of okra. There's me in my garden. This is probably in the beginning when it was first starting to grow. And yeah, these potlucks. I wanted to share this. There's a lot of research out, and if anybody's like more interested in like the research related to like community gardens and gardening, I have a feeling a lot of you, you know, you don't need that as a motivating factor. You're already involved in gardening. But if I do have like a compilation of research about community gardens, and this is one of the more recent articles about how community gardening increases vegetable intake and seasonal eating from baseline to harvest. So it was a randomized control trial, which is a very highly, you know, regarded basically form of research. So that's a pretty cool thing. And oh yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I what did I want to say at the end? Just that I think I was involved in the garden for a few years. And then when I moved away, I kept visiting the garden because I love to like stay in touch with the people, and I was visiting, you know, it's just a beautiful place to visit. It's also obviously right by the High Center. But it was, you know, that was difficult because I would say, yeah, we haven't had a lot of Baha'is involved in the actual gardening, which, you know, at first I was really frustrated with that. I was like, why aren't, you know, Baha'is just jumping on this and just involved in the plots? But it really does. If any of you have participated in community gardening, it's definitely you know, it's something that has to be sustainable. You have to live near the garden. You have to live near it. Like what my mom was saying about her learning, I feel like I connected to that a lot. Like it really helped being close to the Baha'i Center for that collaboration. But it also like you saw the people who kind of like were weeded out were the people that live far away. Like there might be some Baha'is involved in the beginning, or they would come to work days, but they live, you know, 30, 45 minutes in traffic, and they can't come, you know, on a weekly basis to weed or whatever. We had tons of Bermuda grass there. So yeah, the people that ended up staying involved are the people that live walking distance, right? And there actually are a lot of Baha'is that live in that neighborhood now. So I'm curious about what they know about the garden, or how they're invited, like if they're invited to even participate in that, or if they even know that they could be involved in the garden. But there are some original people that have been involved since the very beginning, and you know, I think that the exchange between the Baha'is and the, you know, the greater community here involved, I think that, you know, that there was a lot of exposure to the events that the Baha'is would have. There was a discussion at some point that one of the gardeners brought up herself, Gay, who said, who actually like sent, there was kind of like a disunifying sort of thing going on at the time. You know, somebody was upset about something, and she sent out a list of quotes, Baha'i quotes. She's not a Baha'i, and said, you know, this is where we are. We're here at this this is, you know, the Baha'is are all about unity. We're here at this piece of land. Let's focus on this, basically. And she has attended Baha'i events since then. And I think that recently they had a potluck, is what I heard from the local spiritual assembly. Recently they had a potluck, and they invited the Baha'is to come to the potluck, the Baha'i community to come to that. I don't know who ended up coming to that, but yeah, that's my story. I think I would like to learn more about how to sustain, I guess, that interaction between how do you leverage gardening for core activities and make that sustainable? That's really the thing that I would like to learn at the end. And I'm super excited because I'm moving to Texas, to San Antonio. I'll be close to a community garden, but I'm also like just excited about being involved in like community-based gardening again, in some way, whether it be my backyard that I share with neighbors or in a community garden, and using that in children's classes and using that in junior youth groups and such. So that's my story. I think I probably went over 10 minutes. I'm really sorry, Val. Go ahead. Actually, I'm going to switch to Val. Val's got her own presentation here. And if you hear me, I got too many windows up here, but I'm going to open it. Let's see, file.
While Rose is doing that, I want to just thank everyone for coming today and being part of this and wish everybody a happy 2024. I also want to thank the planning committee for inviting Rose to do this non-presentation. And to thank Rose and her mom, Carolyn, for including me. And I'm glad that they had pictures of gardens with plants, because I know that there are pictures somewhere, but I don't know where they are. So that's not where you're going to be seeing in my presentation. And just for Rose to be on standby in case she has to take over for me. When I was preparing this, I was wanting to dedicate it to a lot of people that are in the next world. My father and my brother, there they are. And that it was my dad who gave me my love of gardening, and my brother, who both of us spent a lot of time on my great-grandmother's farm in southern Indiana. So I have prayers there. My quotes are mostly quotes from prayers for the departed, but they're very garden and plant oriented. So I'm just going to skip that and keep on going. I met Rose in 2017. She had just had a baby. My daughter in San Antonio had just had a baby. I had just read about Rose from an old American Baha'i. It was not 2017, about the Austin Garden. And I was working with children at the Boys and Girls Club, which they rented a space from the Edinburgh Housing Authority. And so this is just a picture of the Edinburgh Housing Authority. And they had built a beautiful, large community garden for the residents at La Posada. And unfortunately, that garden does not exist anymore. So the next slide. This is a picture of the building. It was the Risica building that the Boys and Girls Club rented. And on the right-hand side, kind of behind where that tree is, they're building some new apartments. And so that has really impacted everything that's going on there. And the adult garden was behind that building, and that was taken down to make room for the new additions. And the next slide. These are some of the children who came to the Boys and Girls Club, and then they ended up in a Baha'i children's class. And at this time, we were able to use the room adjacent to where the Boys and Girls Club met. We were able to use the community center room for the children's class and also for junior youth group. The lady on the right at the bottom in black, Roya Kademi, was able to continue with junior youth group in people's homes, and they opened their apartments to her, because when the administration changed at the housing authority, they decided that they did not want us using the community room, and they told us, do not come back. So Roya persevered, thankfully. And the next slide. When I was looking at this fence really represented a lot of things to me, but kind of those obstacles that we were facing, losing the room. Now this is the back of the Risica building where the children had their garden, starting about 2012. And we lost all of our tires that we used to plant in. And prior to starting the children's garden, I had been attending county classes with the extension agent, and she was teaching us about organic gardening. And so I wanted to share things that I was learning with the adults at La Posada and also with the children here at the Boys and Girls Club. And there have just been all kinds of difficulties to overcome, not the least of which was COVID when everything shut down. Then we returned, and then the Boys and Girls Club had low staff. They were understaffed, and so the center didn't open up right away. And so we're just in this transition period, and we're doing our best to reclaim our little garden and to. So these are the kids from 2020. The fence is behind us. The new building going up is right there. And they have their little cups there that we're planting in. And hopefully we're going to have a place where we're going to be able to plant their plants in January. And I think for me, just looking at this picture, it's the faces of the children that keep me coming back. Next, please. There are two other sites that I'm going to talk about briefly. One of them is, it's actually a cemetery, and the cemetery was overgrown and neglected, and the Baha'is in Edinburgh learned about it and began to clear it. This picture is taken 3 years in. In 1993, the cemetery received a name. Prior to that, it really didn't have a name, and not many people in the larger community even knew about its existence. But now, 30 years later, it's become part of the yearly calendar for the city of Edinburgh. And we're planning right now for a big work day for Martin Luther King Day. And so it's really come a long way. Next, please. In 2008, the cemetery received a historical marker. And I'll just mention the man right next to the historical marker is my father-in-law, Al Ramirez. He is the one that brought the cemetery to our attention and really to public awareness. And the African-American lady to the right of it, Ollie Hellerton, has 4 family members buried in that cemetery. Next, please. This is a more recent picture, and the gentleman in the middle is the mayor of Edinburgh, and the lady on the left is part of the Juneteenth committee, which is now a formal committee, and it's under the direction of the City Cultural Arts Department. And next to her is the student UTRGV. There's a UT connection, Rose. And the students participate and help a lot with MLK Day. And then the lady on the right, I don't recognize her, but just community members come. And it's a wonderful opportunity for people to learn about the history of Edinburgh, and particularly the Black history of Edinburgh. This is very near the part of town that was the segregated Black community. That's it for Reslon Cemetery, but there's a connection to the next one, which is Bethel Garden in McAllen. It's about 20 miles away. The woman on the left is Mrs. Stroud. She had a family member buried at the Reslon Cemetery, and she was very instrumental in providing history and photographs for the historic site in McAllen. It was McAllen's Black neighborhood. And so on the right side is my granddaughter is standing there by the little plaque for Mrs. Stroud. And in the background, those tall plastic raised beds are where we're doing our best to have more vegetables there. The city is now in charge of the maintenance of this green space for the neighborhood. And there are many beautiful native plants there that attract butterflies. And there are 5 murals there that depict the history of the neighborhood and just the values that we're trying to promote there. Next picture. This is one of the information signs for Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, which does not exist anymore, but we have done our best to preserve its purpose to have spiritual nourishment for the neighborhood. And many of Mrs. Stroud's family members are in that picture. On the left, the third picture down is her brother, and he had a vegetable garden there. And in that neighborhood, there are still people that have chickens and geese and things like that. And it's a very unique place, and it's a very educational place. Next, please. This is the final picture. This site also received a historical marker. In 2016, the city of McAllen gave it a city historical designation. And then the next year on MLK Day, the state historical marker was unveiled. And so this is a site for Martin Luther King Day events, Black History events, and Juneteenth events, as well as other ones. This one is decorated for Christmas. And to the left, the blue along the wall, it was a neighbor's fence, right? Thank you. That was painted, a mural by Cristela Cano, who represented the history of the neighborhood. And I just want to encourage people to think about some small act of service that you're willing to do, interested in doing, and to just do it and see where it takes you, because this place started out as the neighborhood dump, and you can't see the baptistry behind this kind of pulpit type structure. But when we started there, oh, you can see a little bit of it. It's kind of a green, it's painted green, but there were just headboards leaning up against it. There was a shopping cart in the baptistry, and there was just trash everywhere. And now it's really a beautiful green space for the neighborhood, and it's a site that people can come to and learn something of the history of the city. And that is the end of my presentation. And thank you for listening, and thank you for being here today.
I think I'm gonna move on. That was so great. Okay. What's going on with my, oh, right. Screen, sorry, I forgot we have on a different presentation. Okay, everybody, you're thinking. Sorry, my kids just came home. We were thinking, of having a little time now. We have 30 more minutes. Hopefully we still have some people in the presentation. I know we had like 20 to start off with, which was a good size group. So this was the whole quote that I had taken a little part from. I was wondering if somebody could read that's here attending the presentation. Would somebody like to read this quote from the Rizwan Message 2023?
I could read it.
Okay.
And so the company of the faithful enter the second year of the plan with a fresh perspective and a profound insight into the significance of what they seek to achieve. How different actions look when viewed in light of the society building power they release. This expansive prospect allows a sustained activity to be seen as much more than an isolated act of service or just a data point. In place after place, the initiatives being pursued reveal a population learning how to take increasing responsibility for navigating the path of its own development. The resulting spiritual and social transformation manifests itself in the life of a people in a variety of ways. In the previous series of plans, it could be seen most clearly in the promotion of spiritual education and collective worship. In this new series of plans, increasing attention needs to be given to other processes that seek to enhance the life of a community. For example, by improving public health, protecting the environment, or drawing more effectively on the power of the arts. What is required for all these complementary aspects of a community's well-being to advance is, of course, the capacity to engage in systematic learning in all these areas. A capacity that draws on insights arising from the teachings and the accumulated store of human knowledge generated through scientific inquiry. As this capacity grows, much will be accomplished over the coming decades.
Thank you, Rick. You read that so nicely. Yeah, so maybe if everybody just wants to, this is a quote that I picked out that resonated with me right now. Obviously there's a ton of the writings about gardening and the importance of gardening and farming. But moving into consultation, maybe you can think about how this might resonate with you in terms of these stories and how if it, sparks any thoughts for you about these stories and the learning that we can take from them, the next steps that we can make. And we each had a question from our presentation. We each kind of had a question. I think mostly everyone mentioned their questions, but these are just some questions that we still maybe, are lingering with our own projects. And then, the last question, what have you noticed is effective around community gardening and community building? We would love to hear anybody's thoughts in relation to these questions or other thoughts you have just questions about the presentation. We're totally here for the discussion, here for the consultation. And yeah, thank you, Val, for bringing up that. Thank you for everyone for being here and spending time with us. It's New Year's Eve, so I'm sure there's a lot of things going on too. So yeah, we're just opening up the discussion now for everyone. Uh-oh. Microsoft PowerPoint. That's okay. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know how to.
It seems like something that has been learned by your presentation as well as other aspects of development, that anything that occurs at the community level must come organically from the community itself, rather than superimposed on a population. And so I think that has been shared in the learning here from this presentation, as well as other studies and development, that that when things come from the community itself and the planning, the organization, and the development as it progresses, as it comes from community consultation, that is one of the aspects that helps to have sustainability.
Rose, did you want to stop sharing or?
I just left these questions up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Winnie has her hand up.
Yes, what Val was presenting about cemeteries is there's a nice segue there of how probably every one of us here on the Zoom could do something similar. Decades ago, in the little town where we were raising our children in North Carolina, we found a cemetery that was neglected, that had African American descendants. And it was such a community bonding kind of experience when you find those places. And so, and then bringing agriculture into it with beautifying it. But I also wanted to bring up the fact that so often we are interacting with, or sometimes we don't realize it, what the community processes are, either government or political background information. And more, it seems to me, the better we get to know our own town governments and interact with them, the better will be the way our community building projects go, because it's not just Baha'is. Everybody can buy into these community development processes and all learn together. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you, Winnie.
Yes.
Margot has a question.
Yes, or a comment also about cemeteries. I also love this presentation and what people have been doing. This is just a small aside that cemeteries, because they haven't been used for agriculture, they're places in which very rare native species can be found. So it's just another thing to think about as you think about restoring these cemeteries. To be sure not to be digging up these rare native species. There might be people in your communities that can identify them for you.
Steve, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, I too would like to thank the presenters for excellent information that they provided. And then if we could, I'd like to just move to one step before going to the cemetery, which would be when we might be in need of assisted living or some kind of progressive care. I know there are a number of facilities and a growing number of them across the United States where the people who are there are very interested in issues related to the environment and climate change and so on and so forth, and usually have a great deal to say about how the land for that facility is being used. So my curiosity is raised by the presentations here. What is the experience that any of you might have where these progressive care facilities or assisted living facilities have integrated community gardens into their services, if you will, that are done on the property. And then the produce from that would be incorporated into the meals that are prepared for those who are the residents there.
Mm. Thanks.
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I just one very short thought about the New Day Community Garden. I feel like the people that were most consistent, there was like I don't know, maybe it was like a 50 and up housing in this big Mueller complex design area. They had like one building that was dedicated to more senior living, and those were the people that like really seemed to gravitate to the garden more sustainably, and like came the most frequently, and really you could tell it was a really important part of their rhythm. So you know, it wasn't like we were right next to a dialysis center, actually right next to a dialysis center, and I always thought about that dialysis center, just thought somehow I wish we could connect these efforts to this dialysis center. But we didn't. Yeah. We did a few donations at some point to the food bank, but
the housing authority, the new buildings that they're preparing, they had said that they were going to be for more like older people, and maybe now they're opening them up. But the community garden that was there was actually maintained more by the women, and they were producing food for themselves, for their families. I think the director had hoped that maybe it could become a little bit of a money-making enterprise to generate some money. But I just wanted to mention that my father had moved to, he was in independent living, but there was an assisted living part of where he moved to Boise, Idaho. And there were beautiful plants and things, but he ended up making his own space and growing tomatoes, which were very popular, and he would give them to the chef in the kitchen. But I think that sometimes older people have more of a connection with nature and have had more experience with gardening than the younger ones, and it's important to share that with the younger people.
You're muted, Rose.
I said we have two questions from Arthur and
Neil.
Just wanted to share a couple of experiences in my own community here, not directly by the Baha'is, but they may give you ideas for things to do, community gardens. One was that the municipality installed a number of little gardening plots for use by local neighbors. And the sign said, "These are available to neighbors who are willing to partner with a newly arrived refugee to help them to integrate into the community by gardening together." It seems that's a wonderful idea that might be also something to consider with many other community gardens as a way of addressing two problems at once. There also was an area, a sort of abandoned bit of land along a former industrial site within 5 minutes of where I am, which they decided to create a micro forest to bring some nature back into the city. So they invited any of us who wanted to come and help them prepare the ground, dig it up. And then when the planting time came, we all came out and we planted many different varieties of trees. It was quite a dense couple of different kinds of native trees and other trees to create a forest quite rapidly. And then we get advice, please come, now is watering time. Who wants to come and help with the watering? Or we have to do some weeding now. So we get regular notices to come and contribute to creating this little bit of a green belt along one of the main streets not far from where I live. So this was a municipality initiative But again, that's the kind of thing that sometimes communities are trying to bring nature back in, and the Baha'is could say, well, can they collaborate with that and build wider connections and take it forward? So it's two ideas to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Helpful. San Antonio has, I think it's like the biggest, like immigrants go through San Antonio. There's like a, it's like the biggest flow of immigrants in Texas for sure. I don't know the stats about that, but there is, a high, there's a high percentage of definitely like South American, Latin American immigrants. Yeah, so that's really good to consider. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, we got one more question.
That's Neil.
Neil in Cornwall. Okay.
Neil,
Who it was.
do you have a question?
Oh, disappeared.
No, it was to answer shared experiences.
Mm,
Because
yeah.
on every single dimension of this talk, Cornwall is central. We are a high migrant population from Africa and Latin America. We have a very active community center for the community in which this morning we just had a meeting of 5 Hispanic Latin American families, 3 from Colombia, and 2 from Peru. We're going to change Cornwall's name to Bogota North
So
because 3 of the families there were from Bogota, were they? Or 2? 2. 2. But we definitely had 3 from Colombia. And 2 of them are involved in agriculture. And my colleague next to me, Freddie, he is an agriculture trainer from Colombia. And he has been, he has been with his wife and 2 children in Canada for 1 year. They joined the Baha'i community 2 months ago. Freddie got elected to the local assembly yesterday. And they did this meeting today with the Friends about exactly what Rick read, the quote from the House of Justice about taking ownership. And Cornwall, prior to their arrival, is very much a community garden conscious town of 45,000 on the American border. We have lots of community gardens here, but we don't have the people to the leadership. So to answer Arthur's observation, it is going to happen here, Arthur, in exactly the ways, whether with the old people, because there was an existing organization here called Transition Cornwall about the transition town movement moving from the fossil fuel dependent economy to the renewable fuel economy. So Cornwall is a bit of the city and municipal government is very much on board with this. So there's a conjunction of circumstances here in Cornwall. I've lived here for 24 years, but everything is coming together. And I was asked to be the community garden coordinator for Cornwall. And I didn't do it, but Freddie next to me, I'm talking him because Freddie is, he's working in controlled environment agriculture here, indoor farming, because Cornwall is also become a hub, a global hub for indoor farming, funny enough. So I just wanted to say that the coincidence of this talk today, Rose, is wonderful. But before we want to just test you in Spanish.
Okay.
Could you afterwards?
No. I was going to say podemos visitarles pronto. Estoy muy interesado en este proyecto. I would love to come visit you sometime, but en el verano, no en el. I would love to come visit you in the summer. Yeah.
Por acá te esperamos.
Okay, super.
Gracias.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds very magical. Sounds like
that was the word my wife used today. was one of the most amazing days of our lives. I cannot say we had, and we showed the film 2023 in review. And then afterwards, we facilitated the consultation, and all the participants from all the five families from South America, they shared their impressions of the video, and they said how wonderful it was come as migrants to now feel that they're part of this global enterprise. It was magical. And you were part of the equation, Rose, and your mother, and Winnie Merritt for doing this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you, Winnie. Rose, I just wanted to mention that at La Posada, the ladies who worked in the garden from Mexico, and they had such good knowledge, and they were such an asset to the garden, and that so many people who come, they're bringing skills, and they're helpful and they're valuable, and just I really hope that the gardens help change some of the negative perspectives, and for people to open their hearts to do what he was saying, to partner with people and just do it and learn from them and benefit from their expertise.
Thank you,
I
Val.
want to add to that. And also, a lot of other cultures have a much more spiritual connection with the land, plants, and everything that we can learn so much from too.
Let's see.
Thanks. There's a question in the chat here.
And then
Mark-
Winnie.
Yeah, right. And then Winnie. Mark Griffin asked, does anyone have ideas or experience with reforestation of an old farm, small farm, and gardening together, agroforestry? Anyone have experience with that?
Carolyn, kinda. Putting you on the spot.
Tell you some things not to do. I've planted so many trees, and I thought they were almost all gone, but I found a section of the farm where trees are coming up on their own. I've had better luck with trees coming up on their own than the ones I've planted. There are obstacles. So it requires a lot of, I mean, we've got deer here, so I sprayed them for 2 or 3 years so that they didn't eat the leaves, but when they got big enough, the deer started grating the trunks. So I don't know, that's, yeah, you need to get some expert knowledge, some from, foresters and people who know about that.
Is Mark in the US? Oh, he's in USA, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Is that what is it? Gosh, my brain is blanking.
The Northeast US.
Yes. So everywhere in every state there are these
Extension, you like agricultural or
yeah, and it's a free resource for things like that. There might be somebody in your agricultural extension that might be able to help you with that.
There's a lot of urban sprawl. So there are large stands of trees being sold for development, and there are a few amount of abandoned farms in rural areas. And if you were to successfully grow trees for a long time, there's space in between them to grow gardens. So, and I was actually daydreaming about it as a community development project. So I'm just at the beginning.
Project. Sounds great. We support you. And it's good to network with like create a nucleus, of people that in the Baha'i community, outside the Baha'i community, experts that you can work together from the very beginning on planning that. Yeah, I think Winnie had a question, but maybe she doesn't have a question anymore. And Jay, we have like 3 more minutes. Winnie, did you have a question still?
Let's give it over to Jay.
I have trees, the dwarf Japanese red maple trees and redbud trees that come up from seeds. And I pull them up and put them in a little pot. And I'll get 50 of these dwarf Japanese maples, which are expensive trees. And after the first year, they grow in a little pot. And I'll put them out in the garden and let them grow with my turnip greens or collards or whatever. And after about 3 years, I've got a tree that's worth about $30. So
Wow.
you'd ask about the tree. I guess it's not agroforestry, but it's a way of mixing ornamental landscaping plants with agricultural plants, and it's been successful.
You guys should connect with each other, Mark and Jay. Rick, you had a question too.
Yeah, I was just curious if the friends have been progressing in the studies of book 13 regarding social action and as it relates to these materials with everything that we're talking about today.
Wow, I'm only on the end of book 12.2. I'm in that. I didn't know that book 13. I didn't know. I haven't been privy to that yet.
So all of the content and materials of book 13 is highly related to everything that's being discussed today from the spiritual guidance aspect, as well as interacting with community and emerging into social action in whatever way one does. Yeah. And the document that we all have known of in the past, but really you dig deep into this document, is the prosperity of humankind, is where a lot of the guidance from those 13.1 and 2 come from.
Awesome. I'm gonna look to see if I can study it in San Antonio. Thank you. Has anybody studied that? I think that was your question.
Yes, we have studied it.
Okay, I think Neil, did you have a question? It's 2:30.
No, the whole thing of Rick, I've really appreciated how you've brought this new plan, because social action is now and discourses, like this is discourses, but social action is so much an integral part of the plan. And it's linking up, and then specifically the quote you read. And so in our Canada, in Ontario, each cluster has to provide its annual plan for 2024 to 2025 by January 12th. So, we've got 12 days to do our plan. And one of it is the role of the Training Institute. And we had a discussion of the people just a few days ago, but that book 13 is going to be very much part of the new plan going forward. There's also book 14 too. And we were discussing, I would finish, we were discussing who was going to do which one, and the board member said to me, Neil, you do book 14. Well, I think maybe I'll do 13. But I think I really appreciated how you've brought the Training Institute into this whole discourse.
Rick, what community are you a part of, just out of curiosity?
I'm currently serving in the role as Regional Institute Coordinator for the Northwest Washington grouping of clusters. So that's from as far south as Renton and Kent, Washington, up to the Canadian border to Bellingham and that area, Western Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, nice. We have a really wide spread of people in this presentation. That's really great.
I think I need to mention that when we did book 13, we got connected with Faith Action International. So that's another way where you can spread out, and coupled with a church to do work for the homeless in our area. So there are many ways that that book can spread out into the community.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rose and Carolyn and Valerie so much. Really inspirational, really thoughtful information. And I just wanted to mention in the chat, Christine has put in the chat about the IEF webinar that's coming up where they're going to be discussing COP28, which I think, should be really interesting discussion, which will happen on Saturday, January 6th. So if you're interested, she's put some information in there, put the link in the chat to register. So thank you everyone for coming today.
Could I just quickly mention that Rose had mentioned earlier that she has some research links that are related to community garden and the scientific learning behind its effect on community building. If there was a way that we could connect to get access to those.
Yeah, maybe, I was just realizing that document's a little bit outdated now, so I could refresh that and put some of the more recent research and maybe talk to Dawn about maybe putting that up on our, on our website, like it's a document that we can share.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Do that. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you today. Thanks so much, everyone.